Hello, everyone. Sorry for the confusion. I thought we were going to have an intro or something to this, but we'll just start this off and go from there. The name of the presentation is obviously Artificial Intelligence in the Construction Industry. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Celso Huerta. I'm Vice President of Electric Smarts. I've been at this position for many years, actually been a part of the industry for 44 years now. And so I've been at the forefront of a lot of changes that have happened in the construction industry over the years. And given the opportunity today to speak a little bit about AI and how that's going to alter some of the things that we're doing in the construction industry as well. When I'm doing this, when I was researching for this presentation, I noticed that there were a lot of specifics that were out there, and a lot of it didn't necessarily apply directly to the construction industry. So I wanted to do this presentation a little bit on the 30,000 foot level, looking down, because there's a lot of areas that we need to cover that aren't specific to any one technology that's out there. So just keep that in mind when I'm doing this presentation. About this. So as I mentioned, I wanted to look at AI from the lens of a touch point in history. And what happened was that when I was doing research for this presentation, there were a lot of conflicting ideas about what AI is going to do. And again, as I mentioned, I'm specifically looking at the construction industry in here specifically. So I wanted to look at it from that view. How it affects us in the industry. So when I was doing that, the question popped up as if we're looking at artificial intelligence, it's supposed to be in the future, why am I looking backwards to start off this presentation? And again, I had the opportunity of interviewing quite a few different companies and people about some of the information I was going to use for this presentation. And interestingly, the number one thing that popped up in everyone's mind was fear. Everyone had a fear of some way or another about how artificial intelligence was going to affect them, and also how it's going to affect the construction industry. And their fears actually went from zero, straight to the Terminator. I mean, they were actually talking about the the ending of human existence, and things like this, that they're worried about what AI is going to do. And so that got me to thinking about, okay, well, if that's the case, that people are so worried about AI, what we might need to do, and again, this is, with coworkers and friends and family and so forth that we're talking to, when it comes to AI, I think we need to do is assist the industry to understand a little bit more about it. And as I mentioned earlier in the earlier slides, that that AI is going to be a touch point in history and not necessarily a radical change, as some of us think. And so in order to calm down these fears, one of the things we thought about doing was going back into history and showing the different touch points in history that's already happened, that have actually changed through technology, some of the things for the better. And by explaining this way, that people who have the fear about AI, it might lessen it to them. So some of these changes were like in transportation. We went from trains to cars to automobiles. I mean, from automobiles to airplanes. Other points were communications, from the telephone to the radio and television. And then lastly, ones I thought about were like the actual computers to the internet and the World Wide Web. All these touch points in history at one point was considered so radical that it was just going to be the end of human existence. But we all, having lived through a lot of these, realized that that was not the case. Things have actually gotten better because of these technologically advances and not worse. But we do need to address the elephant in the room. And this is the number one question I got when I was talking to people in the construction industry as it pertained to artificial intelligence. And that was, will AI take my job? And the answer is not as simple. The answer, I should say, is not as simple, because it's actually a yes and a no. And I don't mean to sound vague when I say this, but there are, through human history, technologies that have changed people's jobs. And there's also, through all these touch points, that have created opportunities. And so I'm gonna give you a couple examples of what I mean by this. You know, there was at one point a job that was out there that was highly technical, you know, very skilled, a high-paying position that was out there that, you know, there were thousands and thousands of people who actually did this. They were, you know, the telephone repair person. And for those of you who are too young and seeing the screen, these were actually public payphones that when you left your home and you wanted to communicate with people, these were the kinds of phones that you had to use to communicate with everyone. And these phones were in supermarkets and gas stations and, you know, corner streets. They were everywhere, and there were millions of them all across the United States. But when cell phones came out, this job, no matter how great it was, eventually went away. And so technology altered the way this job was. No matter how technically advanced this person was, this job just wasn't going to be around. Another example, it's actually a personal example I'll give to you guys. When I finished school and got my first big job, it was at a publishing company. And there was a group within this publishing company that were, again, the most sought after and highly trained position there was. I mean, it was very difficult to get into this group. And again, they had the highest skill level. They were on the latest equipment for this publishing company. They were professional typists. These people can type 100 words a minute with no errors and can format a page super fast. And again, for the publishing part, this was very important to get all this information out. But when the company that I was working for went into a company-wide word processing, these jobs, no matter how talented these people were, weren't going to be around. And so what actually happened was half of these people left and they took their talents to other companies to go work for. But the ones that stayed there realized that this was an opportunity for them. They accepted the changes. They obviously learned the new equipment, and then they became a more valued employee. They took their existing skills of being able to type extremely fast and extremely with no errors, and learned a program that helped them become a bit more valued employee. The term is called upskilling. So from this, we can see how if you're looking for AI to help you, you should look at it as a way of assisting you to become better at what you're doing or better at what you're lacking, then it is something that's just going to automatically take everything away from you. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, you know, this is about construction. And so AI will move the construction industry faster in the future, but there is hurdles along the way. And in the construction industry, we do things a lot differently than other industries. And so other industries, for example, are doing leaps and bounds when it comes to AI right now, where they're doing all kinds of great things with it. Construction, as I mentioned, is different. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about some of these hurdles that are currently out there. First and foremost, AI needs data, and AI needs a lot of data. The idea of just giving it something to do and then they could process it and spit it out for you is not that simple. There is a large process that goes into play. I'm going to give you a screenshot that actually shows a little bit about just a fragment of how this would look. You simply be able to just input something in the beginning and it spits it out. But yet when it comes to the way it actually looks, there are layers and layers and layers in between of all that it has to do in order to find the right answer for you at the end. And as we all heard, AI can do millions and millions of calculations in a very short period of time. So the value proposition of this is that they can process information at a much faster and higher rate than a human can. But even with this, if all of this processes is in place and everything works perfectly in between, there's one big hurdle that's going to pop up here. And this is a big hurdle that actually is a big issue that we have in the construction industry right now, and that is bad data. No matter how great the process is, the construction industry right now is littered with a lot of bad data out there. And the screen I showed you before, if you had bad data going into it, it doesn't matter how great the process is, bad data is what's going to come out of it. There's also a lot of misinformation that's floating around out there. So when you put those two together, it's going to take AI a long time to actually start weeding out all of this bad information before it can give you a correct answer. Now, unfortunately for the construction industry, you can't just be close. You have to have it just right. You can't go to a hospital and install a product in there that's not a hospital grade. You can't just say this is close enough and see if that works, because it doesn't work for us. It has to be actually correct. It has to be the right product for that service. And so by having the bad data and the misinformation that's out there, it's going to take AI a while for it to cleanse itself to get to the point to where it's be useful for the construction industry in a mass way. But it also, AI also has an issue that that comes up, and that is what happens when the information is correct, but your outcome is still wrong. I'll give you another personal example. This actually happened to me. I was actually on a very popular website looking to buy something simple. In this case, it was a t-shirt. And when the t-shirt actually arrived to me, in this case, I ordered an extra large t-shirt. It was actually 2 sizes too small. And so when I returned it, and then they sent me the sizing guidelines, it turns out that I would have had to order a XXX shirt just to fit me. But the interesting part is I have a neighbor who would have ordered that extra large shirt and it actually would have fit him perfectly. So we have a lot of human differences right now that AI is going to have to go through and sort. And each of us that have these differences are going to have to, AI is going to take a while for it to actually be able to understand this, especially in the construction industry. For those of you who have ever worked with the blueprint, you'll know that an architect could have a drawing for or a symbol for a product, but yet another architect who can draw the same symbol and just make it a little bit different. And the other architect could do the same, and the other architect could do the same. So AI to learn all of these differences that's in the construction industry is going to take them a while to figure this all out. But there's one key point that separates the construction industry than most others, and that simply is this. We are very slow when it comes to things. Other technologies and other things that are very common in other industries aren't so common and aren't the way we do things in the construction industry. I'll give you another example of this. I was speaking with an electrical distributor a while back, and they've actually closed their online web storefront, which was used to actually purchase products for them. And the reason being is that it actually cost them more money to have a staff and to maintain the store web front than it did the actual dollars that they were coming that was being brought in. Because in the construction industry, if you're an electrical contractor, as an example, you're not going to go to a distributor's website to buy things. There's a process that you're normally used to and have been doing for many, many years. That is the way you would buy. And going to a distributor's website or a handful of distributor websites and placing orders just wasn't what we do. So even though those technologies are readily available and useful in other industries and more than likely in your personal life, in the construction industry, we don't do that. And so because of that, there are so many other things that we do there differently that makes us seemingly look like we're slower than others. So now the question becomes, what can AI do to help me today? I just from the top of my head, I started writing down a few of the benefits of what you could look at for AI. And believe me, there are a lot more than these. These just happen to be at the top of my head. And I put down, reducing human errors, automating repetitive tasks and processes, smoothly handling big data, facilitating quick decision making, enable digital assistance, and improving processes and workflows. And the last one would be a full-time availability that I have here. Interesting, I'm going to talk next about an interview that I did with someone, and they actually used a couple of these points on this benefit list that I put on here to be able to help them with their company. The real world example that I was going to bring up was I interviewed a electrical service repair contractor in Florida. And what they were doing was they were actually looking at processes within their company and was finding out what's the biggest issue that they have right now. And the biggest issue that they had was the weekend. They had a full-time staff that worked Monday through Friday, and then they obviously a lot of technicians that went out and did the job. But when it came to the weekend, they didn't have anybody. And the way the process was currently was they have an answer machine. And so when the customer would call in and have an issue, the idea is that they would leave a message on the answer machine, and then the service technician, they had one who was on call every weekend, could dial in, pick up the messages, and then contact the customer. The problem with that was that when the customer called in and got the answer machine, they didn't leave a message. They just hung up and called the next person. And so for years and years, this company had no work on the weekends. And so this was an issue that this service and repair company thought they needed to look at. So they started doing research into what can help them in this issue that they had. And they happened to stumble across an AI company that had a part of their program that sounded as if they could help them. But when they looked at that program, there's the canned box off the shelf kind of scenario, it wasn't to their liking. It didn't actually fit what they needed. A small portion of it did, but the majority of it did not. So what this company did was to contact this software company and talked with them about how to alter their AI program in order for it to help the service and repair marketplace. Now, this electrical company had weekly meetings with the software company, and they went through this process for months and months and months for them to finally get a product at the end of it that they felt was comfortable enough for them to be able to use. And so now, when you call into this service and repair company as a customer, AI will actually answer it for you as a digital assistant. And their assistant now will ask you, the first question is this an emergency or not? And if the customer says it is, it automatically sends them to the service technician, to the phone of the service technician, who then now answers the call. But now they went a second step further. And with that, what AI does now is AI asks them a series of questions and starts to whittle this down to the actual problem this customer has. And through these series of questions, they brings them down to a point to where the customer now, they ask the customer, so would you like to have the service done, in what day and time? And they actually go and log the call in for them. And at the same time, they gather all this information and send it to the owner so that the owner is now up to date on what's actually going on with this call. And so now this has actually done two things for this electrical contractor. Number one is that come Monday morning, there are a number of calls already scheduled for their service technicians to start doing. And then number two, and this is more importantly, this actually went from 0 sales on the weekend for this electrical contractor to within the last 6 months having almost $200,000 in sales. So now they've gained a digital assistant that is working full time for them for the 48 hours on the weekend. So this is an example how AI can be useful today, and more importantly, how there's more than likely not going to be a canned AI program out there that you're going to be able to just take off the shelf and be able to use for your company or for your own personal use. There's going to have to be some changes or things made to it, and if you're willing to help them, I'm sure they'll be able to interested in discussing things with you. But with all that being said, the next question is always going to be, so where do I start? I mean, there are a lot of companies out there, but I don't really know who they all are or what they all do. How can I start this process? I was very fortunate enough about a decade ago to meet a futurist. The gentleman's name was Brian Solis. And at that time, what Brian was doing was creating what he called the conversation prism. And what this was, at this time, there was social media was the big buzzword back then. And what he was going to do was going to create categories of things, taking all the social media that was out there and categorize them. So that way, if you were looking for music or text, you can go to his Prism and he would actually show the different categories and show the larger companies, social media companies that were out there, and they were categorized for you. So you can actually go through and start looking at the different ones. I researched some stuff that he had recently through some conversations I had, and what he's recently come out with is what's called the Gen AI Prism. And he's basically done the same thing where he's categorized all of the different categories and the different companies, AI companies that are a part of that. Now, of course, this list is by no means all of the AI companies that are out there. But if you're looking for something like music again, or image or layout, at least you'd have a starting off point of which companies right now are in the AI space actually doing this. So this could be a helpful way for you to start looking at AI when it comes to, again, your company. You know, what the other service repair company did was they looked at what they're good at, but they also looked at what they were weak at, and then looked at AI to possibly help them with that. You can also use this personally, thinking of yourself. You know, this is what my strengths are and these are what my weaknesses are. And maybe there are certain things that AI can help you with to help you upskill yourself. So that way, when you are working for a company or looking to work for another company, you've now become a much more valued person into doing all of this. Now, I know this is a quick overview of what AI can do, but I just wanted to, again, thank you everyone for being on this call and for, allowing me to give you a quick overview of what AI can do for you. My email's on there, so if you have questions, please feel free to email me what you have. Thank you.